How many people, English-speaking people, do we have here? 1, 2, 3. Okay, you're lucky. We'll continue in English. How many non-XFX owners are here? Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. That's good. All right. Because then I'll run through a number of presets, just a few first minutes, just to give you an impression of the things which are possible, and then I'll continue with just building presets from scratch and some tricks and questions you can add to that. First of all, if you're on a mobile smartphone and you do want to contribute to the forum, there is a forum thread going on right now. You can add pictures or add comments or whatever. I saw some people already putting in comments there. Second, when I grow up, I want to play like Jens, because that sounds pretty awesome. And the tour was terrific. Amazing what happens here in this building over the past 30 years, whatever, 40? I don't know.
Since 81.
81, okay. Okay, I'll pick quite randomly, forgive my English, a number of presets which are partly of my own, and partly adaptations of presets by others. Not to show off, but just to give an impression of the application of the XFX. I'll select them through Xedit. And there will be also presets from other users. And what I do is my personal approach. I reserve bank A for my own presets, and which are until number 60 things I really use. And then from 870 to 120 are just amp cap presets. I don't use them, but I like to have them there to be able to play them. In bank B, that's where I keep presets from other users which I like for some reason, or just want to keep. And bank C is what actually is bank A of the factory presets, which I use for first 40, 50 amp only presets featuring specific amps. That's what I do. Everybody can have his own approach. All right. Bye bye. Good journey back to Germany. Thank you. Okay, I'll take you along my preset, and those 5 first presets in here all have the same layout. It's just amp sound which is different, and I'm able to step on a scene button which doesn't change the preset. It just change, as it were, a mini preset within the preset. We have 8 of those scenes, and I can stomp any switch here to switch on an effect, which I will do based on. I'll take the second one, was my favorite. It's just a crunch sound based on the Friedman Brown Eye. The IR, difficult word. The impulse response I'm using is a mix of, let me see, Santiago IR, which is in the stock presets, with an electro voice EVM, which is my next favorite. So I mixed them together. It was just what I like, but it may be changed next week. Okay, this preset consists of 4 scenes, as you can see in the name, because that's the way I do it. It just changes with the bare bones dry sound. And then the second scene will switch to a sound which has a pitch block enabled. But it isn't pitch shifting in real sense, it's just detuning, because somebody asked me in the break, where's the chorus in your presets? But I don't like the wobbly wave of a chorus. I like the broad sound of a chorus, but not a wobbly, and a detune effect is great for that. You see here, it's set to detune. Get the mic here. It also has a compressor on, which this first scene doesn't have, some delay, and a volume block. And part of this presentation will also be to introduce you to controllers. And this volume block has here a controller attached to the envelope, and that means that as I hit the string, something happens, and the effect depends on how I hit the string. So my second theme scene in this preset does things like this. If I could play guitar, I would just use this volume knob and shove it up and down, but this is just automated, which works for me. If you have questions at any moment, feel free.
Is that something you could use for like delay swells as well?
Exactly, just like, exactly for that kind of... I'll show you just to have fun. I don't know if you're having fun, but I am. See, this is a very difficult preset. Is it? No, it isn't. Made by Simeon, which is the guru of the controllers on the forum. And as soon as I switch to scene 2, some looping is going on with a very ambient sound and with spreading. The fun thing is, just to put the guitar away now, and listen for minutes how this is gonna evolve. But it's just for swelling and this stuff, it's just great. Going back to my rhythm, I was here. Scene 3 is just a slapback delay because that's often fun. If you play rock and roll, you know. Exactly. And scene 4 is just the first edit. You hear noise because I haven't switched on the noise yet, so take a look at that. That's always a part of building a preset. If you go to the input gate, then this screen appears, which controls the noise gate settings for the preset in general. Whenever I load a preset from another user, you get it off the forum, or Exchange, where users exchange presets, I always look at this tab by clicking on it to get it, and I look at the noise gate settings. Mostly I just switch them off. You can do that by switching the threshold all the way to off. And I always look at the output, because that's where the overall mix settings of this preset are controlled. And there's a level and a balance control for each row. And I just, almost always I keep this everything on default to 0. But sometimes you get a preset which is very loud. That is because the user has adjusted that level up and down, etc. You have to look out for that. In this case, because it's just a rhythm, slight crunchy preset, I chose not to use the noise gate. But if I'm performing somewhere and I get noise from the lights, etc., no, it's okay. Yeah, hallo, het is wisselloos. Okay. I might adjust this to 75. Yeah, and what is minutes exactly? Thank you. Yeah, and the ratio is about good. And yeah, it's gone. Only kicks in. Then you won't hear it. So. Okay. Now, as I'm going to go on with these presets, I'll show my heavy sounds. Concerning the Axe-Fx, there are 3 kinds of models in the Axe-Fx. The amp blocks, the cab blocks, which are digital impulse responses, and the drive blocks. Those are really models. All the other effects are just a kind of containers allowing you to dial in a phaser, a flanger, etc. So it's up to you, or you download the presets blocks from some other people to get the sound you really want. I like this flanger sound. I don't know how the riff goes, but something like that. You get that flanger, which is in the original song, you can just download it in. Same goes for the phaser. If I were to play, and all those effects you just have to dial in yourself. We'll get to that later. Let's see what other musicians have done with the Axe-Fx. Some months ago, I went to see the Deftones in Tilburg, the 013, and they play all Ace effects, and they put the presets on the net for us to download. So this sound is exactly what they use live in front of the thousands of people, etc. I don't know any song of them, so I'm going to just do something that. This is what I do. They do have a very aggressive noise gate, so I dial that down. That's the only thing I do. Like. It's a professional preset. You may not like it, you may it's too heavy, it's too bright, but this is what they used and what sounds awesome in the room.
What are you using now for amplification? The CLRs or?
Both, I think.
Oh,
we
okay.
do have the PA.
I'll switch off the CLRs.
Yes.
And just use the PA. Okay?
No, I was just wondering. There's no reason to switch it off and on.
No, it's better for the tone.
Okay.
So it would be. This is just PA. Yep. Just looking through the presets, is there anything like what you see by somebody else? I don't know.
There was no reverb in this preset?
No, not at all. This is Eddie. A little bit out of tune, but whatever. Okay, I'll go back now to building a preset from scratch. Any
Can I ask
questions?
you a question? There's a lot of discussions on the forum regarding the fact if you want to have the reverb parallel or serial.
Yeah, I'm going to get to this.
I'm always too fast.
If I want to create a preset from scratch, I would say, I will make sure my global parameters and input-output parameters are okay. I cannot show them to you because they are not in XEdit. But I would look here and would say, okay, my instrument going in is a mono instrument. In this case, I want it through the PA, so I'll have the output one on stereo. That suffices. That's the only thing you have to look for. In the global parameters, I want to make sure that the power amp modeling is on and the cabinet modeling is on. The logo is on too. That's it.
EQ flat?
Sorry?
EQ flat?
The global EQ?
Yep.
Yeah. The global EQ is something in the global parameters, also not in XEdit. And it's just personal, just subjective, I just use it to correct for the room.
Yep.
If I think I'm playing, etc., somewhere, and there's an awful lot of high-end reverb, I may slide down some of the EQ sliders.
Parameters.
Okay. Alon, can you assist me? We're gonna do some stuff. I have an awful lot of text there, coming around to most of them, I think. But looking at using the send and return to extend a chain, may. Of course, input has to be connected to outputs. So therefore, I will start with a straight line of what they call straight line, etc. I think I'll start over here by inserting end. Why? I want to reserve the first 3 columns for other stuff. But suppose, let's see, suppose I want to change it to another column, I can use these sliders to change it. Something else. Suppose I have, by mistake, inserted the drive after the amplifier, which is not a common thing to do. But anything is possible if you want it like this. You can swap the two by dragging this one onto this one, and it will change place. And XEdit is full of this kind of small shortcuts that is handy to get into your hand. Okay. We'll do the same as we did before. We'll choose an amp. Now let's get around to setting noise gate. Noise gate with a ratio at 1 does nothing, so I have to increase it to, let's say, 230. And now it's all done. You still have the feedback if you want. Eh? So help me here. What do you want to hear from an amp? Atomic. Okay. Which one? Oh, I can run atomic. Okay. The high one. Sorry, I'm just messing up here. The high, atomic high, which is kind of a martial with a lot of very aggressive distortion going on. Which cap?
You got old hammer?
Yep.
The live model or something?
Just let me look at the user caps. Okay, we got more than, let me see, how many are there? We got 32 factory caps in here. We also have own hammer caps. And you were wishing for them?
The live model one.
From the what?
The vintage version.
The vintage version. Okay, that's, we'll have the Chinese or the English one? Yeah. We must be look as nerds to other people. Okay. Alright. Okay. We get around to amplifier and cap block parameters in the last presentation, so I'll kind of leave it to this here. Just if you want something changed in the present maybe?
No, I used to keep it default.
Yeah?
What I like with this amp, we just fully power up the master volume and put back the
Level.
level and so on.
Okay, I start with a level to prevent you getting your ears damaged, and then I'll... This means that you're gonna use the full overdrive tube, virtual tube amps in this amp. And it sounds like this. Yeah. Can we work with this? Okay. First thing, there are lots of things to cover. I'll just go through them at random. Let's add a delay. Okay, now the best thing to remember is that you can add delays or any blocks after amp and cap in parallel or in series. In series means they're on the same line and everything goes through the delay, which some of you may have had rigs with effect controllers on top and reg gear, 19-inch reg gear, and you may have gone through a serial effects loop on your amp or a parallel effects loop. Yeah, remember this stuff? Anything? Okay. The advantage of parallel stuff is that you don't affect the main tone of the amp. It's just the effects getting added. It doesn't matter with the XFX because everything is digital. So for that purpose, it doesn't matter. But if you want to have full control over a level, it's very handy to put this stuff in a parallel grid. So you see the dry going through. It's kind of like a dry wet rig, if that says something to you. And the delay, we're going to put that to 100% mix because you want only the wet signal of the delay, the trills. And we're going to use the input gain. Where's the input gain? Oh, here. Okay. Okay. Nothing now. So if I want delay, I just add this. Okay. Now, the first thing you may hear is mono at this point. Yes? Or is it stereo? Can you hear it? It's mono. Okay, let's make it stereo. Should be stereo if I'm... Wait a minute, let's ping pong, yes? Okay. One thing to remember in the whole mono stereo thing, it's a lot of discussion going on. When do you want your signal through the PA to be mono or stereo? a lot of people, I'm included, say yeah, it doesn't matter. Let's play mono because in a venue, live venue, you don't want people there to hear only one part of the signal. You're not in an ideal spot, so I play mono. But lots of people play stereo. But if you use something like the ping pong delay, then it matters which output mode you choose. Because if I were to choose the output mode here, copy left to R, disappears. Just a reminder, I'm not gonna get into it too deeply, but it's just a reminder to always look good on your system, which output mode you have. Okay, another thing, if you're going to add the delay, especially a digital delay, it can get in the way of your normal signal. And then a very useful way to avoid it is to EQ the delay. Can you play somewhere? What am I going to do to make it less rumble in the low? It's just okay by this, but I'm going to increase the low cut to 100, which means that the delay trails, the repeats, are filtered at the range of 100 hertz. So it won't get in the way of your low strings with a dry signal. That's the first thing. And a very common thing is to high cut the higher frequency of the repeats at between 3000 and 4000. It immediately turns in a kind of retro vintage delay. It doesn't get in the way when you play. You keep playing. Plus, you'll immediately sound like Eric Johnson, which is not a bad thing either.
Alexander,
So,
I have a question. These settings, the filter settings, does they also work when you don't do the parallel setting? Only for the delay, only for the delayed signal?
Always, if this is in the signal as a series, it just works on the delayed trills, not on the exactly. Okay. Okay. Suppose now I'll get to another one. I'm going to get you to this preset here. A question during the break was, just ignore the signal and just focus on these two blocks. You'll see the row 2 going here and ending here. There's no line between here, so it doesn't go along to that way. It stops here, and there's a return block here. Where's that good for? Now, well, as you can see, the grid has 12 columns, and you won't believe it when you start and you buy the XFX and you think I'm never gonna get to the 12 columns. Yes, you will. And then sometimes you want more because the CPU percentage above allows it. You want to throw in that second phase or throw in the third multi-delay. No, there's no third multi-delay, but just as an example. And the feedback, so that's what I called the feedback send and return blocks allow you to break up the signal at one point and continue on another row, which can be very handy. So you can look at it this way. You just move this fourth row to the second, but then it would extend beyond the 12th column, and so this makes it possible. Yes? Exactly. There is no patching concern. There's no line because the return blocks knows it gets the signal from the send block. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There's only one pair of these because if there were more, you could have, but you won't have enough CPU power to do that. Okay. That's possible. You then creating a so-called feedback block, which can be very handy for some stuff like, let me see, I'll have a preset for you demonstrating this. Just another use of the feedback sender. This is the wrong one. In this case, you see this is straight signal, but for the delay, it gets branched off into a delay. That delay is sent into a cap because that's the impulse response of an old Echoplex preamp, which makes the sound a bit darker and vintage. And then the send block sends it back. So it gets run over and run. It's a feedback loop. That's what it's called. And you can this kind of sound. Where the delay repeats are deteriorating. It gets more fun when I press the controller. It goes on and on and on and on. If you want to do a dub reggae, this is the preset to use. Okay.
Cool.
Any questions so far? I should have saved the preset on it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
If you put on the stone box, you see on the screen that it's switched on or off. Is it the same with your panel?
Yes. Are we getting to the controllers over here?
Okay.
Doesn't matter. There's a wall block in here, and the wall block is off, is bypassed, as it were. If I go into the wall block, and I'll go to the control, which means, what is the wall doing? I get a sub menu, and there is a parameter, and that's called auto engage, and it's has a certain value, which means it is off. Which means that if I move the pedal, the wah switches on, and the block will light up. There we go. So the answer is yes. No. Yeah, I can show it you. I can show it this way. There is a hiccup, as there is with a real pedal. Of course, if you have a real whammy pedal wah, there is a slight. If I were to use my phaser MXR phaser pedal, which I was going to use for the demo, but I'm not. If I click it, I will click. So there is it's like real life, but there is a way. I show you here. This is the whammy. I'll press a switch here, and now the pedal switches into a whammy, and you can do it in the break because I have the two parameters tied to two different parameters. The controls to two different parameters. I can. There's no hiccup. So if you want to check that out, you should look at the preset. And it's because it mixes in the level instead of switching it on or off. Now play some Rage Against the Machine.
Is it the same with the like chorus? If you want to smooth in chorus?
That's much easier because with chorus you can just leave on all the time, put the mix back to 0, just attach the pedal to the mix parameter, and you just add it. You can do it with delays too, with level. Jens did it with his delay. When he pushed the pedal, the delay was already on, but you bring it in. Yeah. Okay. Stuff like XY is something which is introduced with the XFX 2, which means that instead of adding a separate amp block of going to presets, I can switch within the same preset between two different sounds from most effect blocks. In this case, I have a clean sound, which is the Morgan AC20. It's my favorite. My favorite one's kind of like a Vox, but better. I could assign a switch here on my controller to switch the amp block between X and I. I will do it now on the interface here. So you have a way switching XY within a block, and it goes for most of the blocks have XY functionality to switch between two sounds within one block, but using just XY. Any questions? I know it's afternoon, you know, the blood.
I have a question. Can you go back to pitch? What is the difference between the parameter on the right side?
This pitch?
Yeah, on the level and input gain. What's the difference between the two?
On the right? Yes, sir, yeah.
Okay. Some parameters like pitch, like reverb and delay have a mix parameter, which means if the block is in series, the mix parameter determines the balance between the dry signal and the wet signal, the processed signal. A level is just the entire volume level of the block, and input gain regulates how much input level is coming in. By default, most people leave it always on 100, but I use, with my main presets, I always have, because they're in parallel, I always have mix at 100 and level at 0, and I always use input gain to determine how loud the reverb is. Or I can show you another way. I've got a, let me see where the, oh yeah, here. I've got a reverb clean. And if I look at the reverb here, you'll see that there's a modifier, this is a controller attached to the input gain. And if I click it, you see the little ball going up and down because I'm moving the pedal. And there is a great advantage to using input gain instead of mix level, because when you switch presets and you have spillover, delay spillover, reverb spillover, if it gets too technical and I'll see you dozing away, then I'll stop. But the spillover is much better when you use input gain to regulate, to control the amount of reverb delay than when you use other methods.
But spillover is for changing between the presets.
Yeah.
Not with when you use it just this single preset, but use different scenes.
Spillover is by definition always when switching between presets. Yeah. If you want the best spillover, because there are a few things which need work in the XFX, and spillover is one thing, because it's quite tricky to get a bit. But if you want great spillover, use scenes. Don't use presets, but use scenes within the presets. It's much better. Okay. Still with me, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah, it's going to sound better.
I have some trouble with leveling my presets in terms of volume. So when I had the standard, what I did was I pressed the bypass button and I matched the level of my preset to the signal through with bypass. But when I do that with the X2, the bypass level is way too low. So how do you level your preset?
Yeah, okay. Two things. It's very important to talk about this topic. Input levels, output levels, and leveling. Let me get around to this. First of all, when you hit the strings very hard and you look at the inputs there, can you hit the strings? It's not in there, sorry. You can have two kinds of clipping. First of all is the input clipping. And the first input parameter says input levels, but it doesn't determine the loudness of your instrument as it did on the standard and ultra. For the standard and ultra owners, you could turn that input level and it would influence the tone and the gain. It doesn't work like this on the XFX2. It's very important to know that. Input gain is done in another way. Output levels is something they can clip over here. You see the red clip light for out flashing sometimes. Just means that you don't have to switch out on the front, but that's just the output of the whole unit. Somewhere in the grid, you have to bring the level down because it's digital clipping. So an amp level is the most common used parameter for this. Okay, now if you go through these presets, and I use, in reality I use just 5 presets live or something, but sometimes I go to another one, and you want all those presets, in this case mine go up to 60 or about 55, you want them to have the same level. What you cannot do is use your iPhone or a decibel meter or whatever to measure the sound. It does not work, because a clean sound is much more dynamic than a high gain sound. So you may think that on the meter they are the same. It doesn't work. You have to use your ears for that, and it's best to set your preset levels. Just my opinion, by always using a backing track or when playing with a band, because only then you will know what the levels will be. And the best the parameter for that to do that is the amp level parameter. This is advised by Fractal as well. In fact, if you look at this. Let us check this preset. if you can play something. In fact, I can use any of these blocks when engaged, and then the level parameter to regulate, to control the overall level of the preset. But it gets so messy, I always keep everything at 0, but except amp level, and that's where I determine how loud the entire preset sounds. So in this case it's been -6, but in some cases it can be -25, and people think, oh man, that cannot be, that value is much too low, etc. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just a digital level for volume control. It does not influence the sound. Master volume, that's important. Drive is important, but amp level is not important for the sound. So how do? I go to a clean sound without compression, like this one. I switch on everything that influences the sound. For example, I always have a block here, which is a graphic EQ, and I only use it to raise my presets for lead boosts. So I switched it on. And I'm gonna switch to the bridge pickup, and I'm gonna hit hard. And now I'm looking here. Does it clip or does it not clip? Thank you. If it doesn't, if it does clip, I'll decrease amp level until it doesn't clip anymore. And at that stage, I'll switch this off, etc. I know that that's the limit, the reference for all my other presets, because it does not get any louder than the pure clean sound with my boost. And even though I think that heavy sound, you know, it does not get louder concerning clipping than this sound. It's always it's in the wiki. It's the right way to do leveling. Take a clean preset, switch on everything that influence the volume level, test it, dial it in, and use that as the reference.
I seem to remember someone from the forum once said that they used the level parameter on the cab block instead of the amp block. Can you say anything? Is there any difference?
Now, not really. In my case, there is a difference because I'm using my cab only for the output, main output to the PA, but I'm also using the amp block to go through a power amp, etc. So I'll have to do adjustments in the amp block to influence both, and doing it in the cab block would not work for me. Okay, I will go back to a heavy preset. So we were in Tomic, but we're going to switch to something else here. We have a recto. Okay, what is done often? Are you using a drive block with your heavy presets? Yeah. Old trick from the real amps and cabs is when you use something like a rectifier or whatever. A rectifier has a very loose, woolly bottom end. So you want to tighten that low end. There are a lot of possibilities to do that. You can engage the cut parameter here. We get to that later. But a very common trick is to use a drive block in front of your butt, and that's the trick. Switch off the drive of the amp block and turn up the level to whatever. This means that you won't have that much gain added, but you do have the low cut and the high cut of the tube screamer. No, it's not a tube screamer. I need to set it to the tube screamer. Just the normal one. Where is it? Oh, it's alphabetic. Okay. Yeah. Now if you do a thumping, you know, palm muting. Now, if you're playing by yourself, you may think this sounds, I don't know if you like it or not, I don't know, but this may sound okay, but that low end that will get in the way of your bass player. You don't want. Yep. You don't want it. Just checking. I may be talking rubbish here. So you want that get into the way of the bass player. So and that's where a drive block with this setting is great for, because it tightens that low end. It cuts all low frequencies below a certain threshold, and you get this stuff like this. Yep. Okay. If you have any questions, suggestions, talk to me, because I'm just going through this stuff here. Okay, we have. Yep.
Yeah, sorry. You also have some kind of filtering trick. I once read from if you play death metal or something like that, you can use a filter trick to cut it below 90 hertz or something like that.
There was a very important trick in the days of the Standard Ultra, where Cliff Chase from Fractal Audio suggested adding a filter in front of the amplifier block, which reacts as soon as you hit the low strings with palm muting. That is not longer needed, because of all the ways you have to deal with this in the XFX2. It doesn't get used anymore with the 2, but it still can be used. Just look it up in the wiki, it's there, and yeah.
So yeah, because you mentioned to get in the region of the bass control. I usually filter out below 90 hertz of 100 hertz.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into that. It's part of the last presentation. We can look into that. If you weren't to use the drive block, but you were to you want to tighten up that low end and get those low frequencies, you can also use this parameter, which is part of firmware 11 or whatever. This was introduced. Can you just thump? Here. This is a mastering trick. This is just the same as going into the cab block and adding the low cut there. It says just the same as going here to the advanced parameters and increasing, or where is it? Low cuts, and going here to 120. There are so many ways to do it all, and it's all meant to tighten up that stuff. Okay, I'm just going through all the stuff here. Okay, what we have in XEdit and on the hardware, but the easy way to deal with this, suppose you have this drive block over here. Yeah? Oh, sorry. That is. Let me get it. The cut is over here. Yeah. Suppose you want to use that Tube Screamer block over here very often in a lot of presets. Just use the block library. If you click on the drive, you can right click also, but we go to this, what is called widget. Sorry, this one. And you can add, by clicking this plus, this drive block as a block, and we call it TS tight bass. Is now saved onto your hard drive. Suppose you're going to go to another preset. Huh? Is niet nodig. Volgens mij niet. Ga hem nu kijken. Suppose I want to add it into here. I click this. I add a drive block. And hopefully, yeah, there it is. So it's saved onto your hard drive, and you can use it in whatever preset and load it from the hard drive here. Something else is, if I want to use this drive block and store it inside the XFX, or I have a drive block and I want to store up to 8 or 10 settings, you can use the global blocks. There's something else that will means that you, instead of reloading it through XFX from your hard drive, you can use it within the hardware or through this method by storing it as 10 saved settings of a block. Don't go further into this, but a very easy way. I use, if you check my presets, I use global blocks everywhere, because I know they're consistent. I know that if I want to change the phaser rate from 2039 to 2040, because that would make me very happy for some strange reason, I can use it, just use it in one preset, and it will be changed in every preset where the same global block is used, which is a tremendous time saving.
If you change from firmware, what do you have to rework all your presets?
Depends on the firmware. Yes, we can all recognize the horror of some firmware versions where things change, although the last firmware changes are kind of smooth, stable, and consistent. But yes, there sometimes are changes which which do require adjustments of the presets. No way around it. It's just the way the man works. You may not like it or may like it, but if he thinks he can do something better, he forgets about the past and just does it. And you can choose to stay with the old firmware. But sometimes the new firmware brings along the things you want and require you to readjust stuff. That's true. Okay, going to scenes. 5 minutes? Yep. Okay. Use AXEdit when you go to scene. For example, if I want to add this to scene 5, I right-click the one on the scenes. I say copy current scene. I go to 5 example. For example, I say paste. Things like that work. Also, suppose I want to copy the amp settings for the X mode to the Y mode. I can do it on the hardware, but it's much easier to do in AXEdit. I click, I say copy, and I can swap. That's very important. Sometimes you want to swap X and Y within the same block, and then use AXEdit for that stuff. That's much handier. Flipping. Wow, we're getting on fire here. It's parallel mono stereo.
Looper.
Huh?
Looper.
What's with the looper?
Can I add different sounds in the loop when the loop runs?
You can add sounds. You can build on top of.
Yes, but change preset.
Just put it in the front. Start with the looper.
You can do it within one preset.
But changing presets as well? Does it keep running? Oh, yeah, it keeps on running. Yeah. So you would let us take this one. Add a looper. Just saving this one, going to 99. Adding a looper. We're just fact finding here, just looking if it works. I don't know. And Anna is going to record the most amazing piece you ever heard. Wait a minute. I'll go with the threshold. Maybe it works, but maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But we'll see. Yes! We switch presets and the sound changes. Answer questions. The question answered. A little bit tired here. All right.
Whenever I start up AXEdit, it's really block definitions. And that's kind of annoying.
Every time?
Every time.
That probably means you have an authorization failure or error or issue on your computer where the folder where the settings of the blocks, the definitions are saved, are not kept because you're not an administrator or whatever. So you have to ask support for answer about that, but that's probably the reason. They don't get saved, so they have to be and it takes minutes. Yeah.
So put it to administration rights.
Try to run it as Windows or Mac?
Windows.
Okay. Try to run it as an administrator to see if it's solved stuff. You run the latest version?
Yes,
Okay. Otherwise, ask a question to Fractal your support because it has been it has occurred before, and I think it's a file administration error.
So what is the setup of your floorboard actually? Is that 10 presets and 5 scenes or something?
I use 5 presets, so I can use switch banks to go to the next 5, and I have scene buttons. I always use maximum of 4 scenes. I use one. That's a special feature. I have reprogrammed one instant access switch to be able to switch to my favorite presets wherever. It's kind of like a global preset, but differently programmed. I use one switch to let me see. This is use this the rotary. So one switch for speeds and to switch between wah and whammy. And then I've got a compressor drive. I've got my boost switch, delays, etc. And I've got two types of delay. I like this one. I use it especially. This is my spillover delay. Suppose you hit. I go from very heavy to clean, and that delay keeps on going, and that's what I use. Yeah. Okay. I was going to talk about controllers. We're running out of time here, I think. Maybe later. Maybe we done some stuff like adding in shimmer. We did it before today, I believe. I was going to show a trick maybe later how to use one pedal and scenes for as a wah, as a whammy, for ring modulation. Just one pedal and using scenes, a very handy trick. But I think that's it for this moment. Yeah. Okay. All right.